I just wanted to follow up something about a conversation that we had when you were in the house. So the whole thing about you singing Sarastro, just the aria, was really pleasing to me because actually you and I haven't discussed this, and I didn't know what you were studying with your singing, but I think it's wonderful because basically because you've sung that in a concert, surely it psychologically boosts your confidence that you can sing low notes more effectively in a choir. That's the only fucking reason I've ever. Well, that's one of the reasons I've used Sarastro's arias myself, because I also warm up with both of those arias. Personally, I think it's obligatory that if you sing the In Diesen Heiligen, that you stick in a bottom E at the end. Should be compulsory. What's the fucking point of singing it? And I don't understand why they don't do that in opera houses. I've only heard Matti Talvera do that, the Finnish bass. Anyway, so what I'm saying is, yeah, it's more important for baritones to use bass arias or bass songs, it doesn't have to be an aria, to warm up the low range because it doesn't come as naturally to us. But actually, in doing so, we connect to the low larynx, because you will notice you will only ever sing a comfortable low note if it's in a low larynx. You can go, you can do that, but that's actually kind of a low larynx. So I'll show you. See, that I would say that's still low larynx, but the issue is the brightness of the sound can take you out of the low larynx, right? Which is why, for training in the low range, you can use NG and then you do E. So you go. If you can do an E vowel, so basically, can I just explain that process? You start with the mouth open, R, then you do an NG, keeping your mouth open, the NG, then you should feel, when you switch from an NG to an E vowel, there is a flick of the tongue. So it's back of the tongue flicking, and by flicking, it doesn't have time to get tense. It means that you literally prevent tongue root tension. So you're going, if you can do that's what I just did, that was a really good E vowel. If you can do that on a low note, you can do that with any vowel on a low note. It is why, basically, I stopped teaching, like the vowel spectrum to my students. I used to warm up with E. I used to do all that shit. I don't do that anymore. It's actually a fucking waste of time. I'll tell you why, because all you need to do is NG into... You can, by the way, if you're going very high in your range, you can actually use a rolled R instead of an NG. But you need to have semi-occlusion of your vocal tract in order to feel breath pressure and the placement of resonance. And then you flick from the placement of that semi-occluded sensation. You flick into the E vowel. And then from the E vowel, you can go to every other single vowel. Because what the E vowel does is it shows ring and brightness. If you have a very good E vowel, it means that the back of your tongue is high. It means your tongue is therefore not experiencing tongue root tension. It means the tongue is flexible, which means that the tongue can mold itself to the different languages that you ask of it. And I have to say, if singing teaching does not observe what I'm saying, it will literally be a hindrance to the language, and thus it is poor singing teaching. It is absolutely imperative to be able to sing a very good E vowel before. I mean, I would say, okay, initially you could do R, because you need to have openness, and that's the point. The low larynx, you can experience it with the R. You maintain the feeling of space with the open mouth into NG, then you flick the NG into E, and it is that bright E which will keep the tongue. And what you're doing is you're literally training ring within a low larynx, and you are training the operatic chiaroscuro from that. And I've spent fucking hours working this shit out, and I've been teaching it ever since the moment I worked it out. I worked it out in January of last year, and my singing has just gone through the fucking roof in terms of quality since then. And I just spawned, and I was thinking I was going to use this audio on my YouTube, and I still might. Hope you don't mind. But obviously, this hasn't initially been. It's just because I've explained it really well, and I often don't explain these things well. But I'm afraid singing teachers who neglect the chiaroscuro in operatic singing, namely the ring within the low larynx, if they neglect that on any note in the entire range, they are a bad teacher. Because it means if they're neglecting it, they can easily be encouraging the wrong habit, which will make singing the language difficult. And if you sing the language badly, you will sing the music badly as a result. Because good linguistic qualities, namely good vowels, good resonance, leads into ease and connection to consonants, which impacts the positioning and structure of the throat in the act of singing. And if you're compromising efficiency of sound, which is what good linguistic skills create, if you're compromising that, you're actually compromising the music, because it means that the music gets affected, and therefore, if you're sat at the back of an opera house, you won't be able to hear the singer because they're not efficiently using their voice. And this is why there are too many charlatans in the opera pedagogy world. All they need to do is to care like I do. They just need to sit down and work stuff out. I'm not saying that I understand enough about opera to teach it, because I don't. But I understand enough about opera to actually make some pretty good noises myself. And I can encourage foundations of a very healthy chiaroscuro, which will ultimately lead into development and progression into the extremities of the range. So namely, what I'm talking about will provide a core resonance for a singer, as long as it's relative to their range. And then when they get into the high notes, they can then train the sensations into the high range. But in order for them to do that, they need to learn with a specialist. So if you think you're a Helden tenor, you need to learn from a Helden tenor. You need to learn from a dramatic tenor. You can't possibly expect to sing an amazing top C with Helden tenor repertoire if you've been learning with a lyric tenor. No way. It's a completely different approach to viewing the voice. And this again is where charlatans exist, because people profess in music colleges. I think this is a global issue. They profess in music colleges to be able to teach what they've never experienced. Like somebody singing a top C in, as Don Ramiro in La Cenerentola is very different to someone singing a top C as Manrico in Di Quella Pira, for example. Very different. I'm sure all you have to do is just look at the history of operatic singing to understand that. Lauri Volpi would not have said that his top B's and C's were easy. In fact, Gobbi said they were explosive. So there you are.